Tim's Guide to Grief. Don't click away. What I discuss in this video, everyone will face at some point in their lives, either themselves or with their friends. I have 12 things that I found out myself, both for those who are going through it right now and those who have friends and family who are. I'm Tim. I usually do videos about hiking. I had to make this video because of what happened to me. I lost my partner John nearly a year ago. 27 years we were together, and I felt very strongly when I was going through it and when I had the idea to make this video that there needs to be more support for those who are bereaved. Strange to talk about death on a sunny day like this, but it was a sunny day like this that he died, and I was watching the paramedics trying to save him from this very spot. We usually think of our own mortality, but we don't usually think about the death of others. Paradoxically, it should be the other way around. It's lights out, ends over, you don't have to worry about it. Whereas probably should prepare more for the death of friends and family. I spent a lot of my life running away from that, being just like probably a lot of you right now, like, oh no, I'm not going to think about that. Oh, click off. It's not good, because when it actually happens to you, it's much worse. It's something we do in the West quite a lot, which is just avoid thinking about death entirely. So why do I want to make this video? Well, for others that are going through it at the moment, as I said, there's lack of support there. There's not really much official support. The NHS talking therapies is not very good. The rest of it is left to charities, and they're overstretched since lockdown. When I signed up for the cruise support, which is not trained counsellors like I had later at London Friend, who's a LGBTQ service, all the support is very short term, and there's like a 3-month plus waiting list to get it. So it feels like there's a massive gap here of things which need to be filled. And I have to say, I'm not a mental health professional, I'm not a counsellor. This is just what I discovered going through the nearly year since John died. Firstly, everyone's grief is different. I mentioned the LGBTQ sport, and you might go, Tim, why are you mentioning sexuality or gender about this? Everyone, people are people. It's not the same. Everybody has different circumstances. Everyone has different things they're facing, and that does impact grief. And also in the way you face bureaucracy, pensions and things like that, having different relationships, having a different name, not being married or civil partnered, a long-standing issue with a minority having higher mental health support needs. These things can correlate and intersect. The second is that grief is like a wave. Imagine standing by the shore, a large wave comes and breaks over you, a sudden shock, and then another wave, and then another wave, and then another wave crashing over your head, and you can feel the undertow pulling you under. It's quite scary. Over time, that frequency gets less and less, but still, when it does hit you, it's as big, or almost as big. As time goes on, maybe the height of the waves sometimes get lesser, but sometimes they come in and there's a tsunami that hits you. That is probably the best metaphor I have for grief. The frequency gets lesser, but the depth and experience of the grief and the depth of feeling does not get lesser. It gets less frequent. I found that quite a useful metaphor. There's another one, which is there's a hole in your life, the shape of the person who's gone, or just a big hole, a big void. You keep falling into it. You don't know where the edges are, and you keep falling into it. It's a very deep hole, and when you fall into it, it hurts you. You climb back out, and that keeps happening again and again until you learn where the edge is. Still, sometimes you stumble back into it, and maybe over time the hole will get shallower, and maybe even it will shrink a bit. But there's still times when, a crevice opens up and you fall into the abyss. There is a space in your life where that person was, and you just keep falling into it. The reason why I mention these metaphors, they're a good example of the non-linearity of grief. I think people think, and I did as well, think that it sort of fades, gradually over time. But no. Sometimes you can go backwards. Sometimes you can progress forwards, and it can feel like things are going better. Years later, and suddenly, wham, it hits you again. There have been times when it's been just as bad as it was, when it had just happened, and I've been surprised at that. And there have been times where I've actually felt quite good, surprisingly upbeat. I feel that it's a bit like a parallel world or a parallel time. I mentioned me watching the paramedics tried to save him in the flat while sitting in this very spot. I am simultaneously here speaking to you now, and also I'm in that moment. And this might be a complex PTSD thing, but you are stuck in that moment. And then there's other times where you are, you're getting on with your life, you're doing things, but it's almost like they're running in parallel. And I don't know when that changes, maybe never. Quite a strange coexistence. The third one is don't tell everyone all at once. I made myself quite upset trying to tell like shops and restaurants, and it kind of re-traumatizes you. I don't traumatize, it's not really re-traumatizing you, you're actually traumatizing you. Not everyone has a right to know immediately, that very second. It can feel like you've got to tell the whole wide world, and that's where social media can be helpful if you want to be that public, as I was. It can save you the bother of telling everyone. Everyone's different, some people don't like that approach. No one has a right to know. There are certain ex-friends of mine who I don't know if they know, but as I say, they're not in my life anymore, so they have no right to know about that. The important thing is to tell the people that need to know first. Obviously, things like a death certificate, pensions, friends and family, and people to support you. There is a certain set of people who need to know fairly early on. In the UK, we have something called Tell Us Once. When you sign the death certificate, you get a code and a form, and online you can notify through that various organisations. It doesn't work for everything. It does like state pension, but not private pensions. But the private pensions, they worked out John had died. Maybe they've got spies on the Tell Us One system, but it's mostly for things like council tax, various organisations, and that's quite useful. But not everyone's notified by that, and it's a bit wonky. I think the best thing to do is to prioritise the things you need to do right away. There's a lot of stuff like John still gets stuff from the Georgian Society and the Essex Journal and all kinds of things. The thing is to focus on the things which are imminent, like it will cost you, or it needs to be stopped right then. Apart from council tax are evil. Most of the things are fairly understanding. Death and taxes, the tax man is not necessarily so patient, but there are other things that that can wait. And I think that some of the things that I rushed around trying to sort out after he died, I probably could have waited. So much panic about housing and money and that kind of thing. There is no guide to this. There is bits, online, various organisations, but most of it you're on your own, and that makes it a very scary thing. Number 4, there'll be a lot of Sadmin. Sadmin is the sort of bureaucracy of having to deal with telling companies and utilities and pensions that a person has died, or dealing with an impending death it's a case of someone who's terminal, all that management of accounts and stuff like that. It's lots of hanging on phone calls with weirdly jaunty music. You think this is really inappropriate. Very few organisations have specialised bereavement lines. It's worth checking to see if they do, because they do help to get through to somebody, and not have all those lies about we really, value your call, so we're going to keep you on the line for 3 hours. You can't deal with that when you're in that state. Those early weeks and months, you have to really psych yourself to do a single phone call, or I did. If you can get anyone else to help you with that, do so. Phoning up the council or whoever and haranguing them. I could do this whole video on uselessness of my local council, Kingston Council. You're a bunch of... Mary Curie did a very interesting campaign about trying to limit the toll on people having to go through Sadmin and the bureaucracy and changing electricity accounts, changing the gas accounts, I've gone through all of this. It's not fun, not at all. And one of the worst things is when you get passed from pillar to post, from person to person to person. There were sometimes I was in tears on the phone. I'm trying to be positive here, but that is not a good thing. On the other side, if you have friends or family that are going through this, offer to do this for them. It will help. It will be a lifesaver for them, because just dealing with all of that is just avalanche of bureaucratic crap. I think there's a special circle of hell for people who work in banks, especially around bereavement support. They decide to go on holiday and delay the forms, and the probate took months to sort out. And while probate is being sorted out, all accounts are frozen. It's something to think about beforehand, is make sure you have some money of your own, some savings of your own, a rainy day account. If you are reliant on somebody and they die, all of their accounts get frozen. There is some understanding with utilities and organisations about probate and that it takes months to sort out. It's a stressful time while you're doing that. So it's good to have some money or support or independence during that period. I had a bit of savings, not much. It was stressful, but it helped. 5, people will not know what to say. I got to dread the question. And I know it's social lubrication, and I'm not a fan of it anyway. I'm neurodivergent. I don't like small talk anyway at the best of times. But the question was saying, how are you? Are you fine? Or, you know, that sort of variance. You know, all those questions which you're supposed to go, yeah, I'm fine, I'm wonderful. I've had leeway because of the death to say, no, I'm not fine. I'm sure people are a bit like, yeah, that wasn't necessarily the answer I was expecting, but tough. And if you're supporting people who are going through that, and just expect them to actually answer honestly, you know, you can't be fine during this process, if ever. I kind of dreaded people asking me how I was, you know, because I just didn't want to answer. How am I? Well, my whole world has caved in. How are you? I will say to those who are supporting someone, it is better to say something. Do not do what some people do, which is run away and don't speak to that person ever again, or just sort of get very distant. It's very lonely grieving when you've lost someone. You come home to an empty home. It feels quite lonely because it's a very specific club. It feels like there's 2 sets of people in the world. Those who have lost someone close to them and those who haven't. You think that actually the first group is actually quite high, but it seems like, you know, like myself, my mother died when I was in my 40s, I think, 40s or late 30s, but I didn't really feel anything then. Whereas, you know, so I hadn't really had this situation of somebody close to me. My grandparents had died before I was born, so I never really had that situation. It hit me, like I say, like a proverbial truck full of bricks. There just seem to be those people who get it and those people who don't. But if you're in the don't get it camp, acknowledge that, but also stay in that person's life. There is important roles to people who don't get it, and they should definitely make sure they're still part of their life. It feels like some people think they can catch the death and just blank you. It hasn't happened too many times to me, but I understand it because I was a little bit there. People think, oh, I don't know what to say, so I won't say anything. And that's kind of the worst situation, because when it happened, I preferred people to say something and maybe not say it totally correctly, but be there, than to feel lonely and alone. So I would say to those who are supporting those that are grieving, listening goes a long way. If you don't understand the experience, just listen. And if there's any way you can help, ask if you can help in any way. And so there are things you can do, even if you don't get the death thing, that I'll get to later. Number 6 is take a break in cleaning and clearing. I could only manage about 3-4 hours. 2 weeks after he died, I started clearing things, which might sound extreme, but I had to go through 20,000 plus pieces of paper, and it took me months. And so I'm glad I started early. There is a point of where, like, it's not only emotionally exhausting, it's physically exhausting, and it's just too much. So always take frequent breaks. I created my mental health by trying to do like 7 or 8 hour days of clearing. Things got very bad and dark. Don't do that. I was trying to approach it like I was spend 10 hours, 15 hours on things and just get them done. But you don't have that kind of energy. Those kind of spoons, to use a spoons metaphor, you just don't have them anymore. You have to recognize that. Otherwise, you can have real serious mental issues. And I would say to those who are hoarding, stop it, get help now. And to those who know hoarders, get them to sort it out while they're alive. I know it's difficult to have those conversations when they're alive. It's a lot easier if you help them sort it out, just to get that stuff sorted. And if you are a hoarder, to sort it out and not leave it to your loved ones. I wish there was hoarding help on the NHS, because it's such an acceptable thing to hoard stuff, and it causes so much trouble for the people after you die. This one's for the non-grieving. Avoid comparisons. Avoid comparing a death to another death, especially if it's not human is a tricky one, because obviously I mentioned about those people who get the whole death thing, and I flock to the people who, even if it's parents or grandparents or people in their life, they got it, but there's kind of differences within that. If you're a younger widow, as I was, it's different to somebody who's widowed in the 70s or 80s. Obviously losing a child is an experience I can't talk about. There are some commonalities with grief, but it's very different. Parents are different, because I experienced that. Be very careful about comparisons, especially to things that don't involve deaths, how they'd prefer their partner died to someone divorcing them. Wow. It's just so... Luckily it wasn't anyone me directly, it's someone on a YouTube video. It's very telling. It's how you know it's almost a bit like you're either in the club or you're out the club. What people say sometimes, you're like, yeah. Maybe a breakup divorce could be more traumatic than a death. I mean, obviously my mother, I didn't really grieve or feel much about when she died, but having had breakups and having had the death of a partner, I would say death of a partner is, it's like, it's not even on that chart. It's way off the scale. You can't resolve anything. You can't speak to them anymore. There's no hope of getting back together. There's no closure at all. So yeah, be very careful about those kind of comparisons. The next one is quite a sad one. Friendships will change. I think with any major life event, friendships will shift, and those who come to your help might surprise you, and those who don't come to your help might surprise you. It might be the people you thought you were closest with, they won't necessarily support you, and vice versa. People who you weren't as close with will come to your aid. It's weird. Partly that's because those who have experience of death and grief tend to be a bit better at navigating this. But then again, I've got friends who haven't been in this situation who have been brilliant. Those who are actively not helping, becoming a distraction or becoming an issue, are probably best left on the naughty step and just put on hold. Next one is ask for help and counselling. Historically, I've been very bad at this. The kind of person to suppress and hide and just run away. Denial is a river in Egypt and all that lot. But when John died, I was like, give me all the help, give me all the counselling, give me, because I realised that in his case, it was a factor in his death, was sort of denying that he was ill. I think a lot of this mental health demons just ate him alive. And I didn't want to follow the same way. So I learned to ask for help and also let people help me. And it's also a mutually beneficial thing that in a situation as a big monolith of death, it feels like it's just too big and vast and scary, and you feel like you've got no power, especially when someone you love is going through that. To actually be able to help them in some way and be there for them, it kind of regains some agency, it regains the power. It makes people feel less powerless. So it helps them as well. So when I realised there was like a two-way process, it's mutually beneficial where people can help. Although in my situation, a lot of the sorting and a lot of the stuff I had to do, there are people out there I love dearly who have helped, but a lot of it other people could not do, and that made it harder, I think. That kind of help can mean in a variety of ways, like online counselling, real life counselling, which I've had both those, support groups, Facebook groups, books, podcasts, meetup groups, death cafes. Not been to one of those, but I aim to. Paid therapy, if you're rich enough to afford that. I'm not. I had some virtual therapy from Cruise, only 6 weeks. I think we actually had 8. I got an extra 2. I got a woman in her 60s who was a volunteer, and then 12 weeks at London Friend, the UK's first LGBTQ charity. That was great because then I talked to somebody who understood, like me, who was non-binary, and we could talk sort of one-on-one, whereas when I was talking to the white-haired older lady, didn't really understand about me and being non-binary and being queer, and so it is important to find people that understand your situation as well. Some of the support can be a bit too generic. It is important, sounds contrary to what I just said, sometimes it's okay to refuse help. That if it's not working for you, I had a situation with a local bereavement service where the guy was not really listening to me, very hard to talk to, and then he missed the second session, and so I was like, I'll put that on pause, and I haven't been back with them. But it's better to have options. First thing, get on all the waiting lists. Don't mind that. We had a real problem with the sun shining through the hedge into the lens and then bleaching everything out and spoiling takes. The next one is it will take time. There is no timetable for grief. I think some people come up with these dumb figures like, oh, in 6 months, in 3 months, in 12 months, or some kind of weird mathematic algorithm that, oh, it's 1 month for every year you knew them or something, which in my case would be 27 months. Hey, these are all complete bollocks. There is no linear time frame where you get over it. Not that you never get over it, and neither should you. There is processing of grief. I hate this phrase, grief work, you'll come across. It's a bit like, oh, 95, yeah, okay, I'm clocking on at 9 o'clock. Sit down, commuter, and we're now doing grief work. Only in a capitalist society we have the concept of grief work. Yeah, as if like, yeah, you've got to work at your grief. Yes, you've got to do some grief weightlifting, and you've got to bulk up your grief muscles. But there is this concept that, yeah, it does take work to get through it. I don't think it's necessarily a wrong concept, but it is a bit laughable, this idea of it's very, you know, oh yes, I just have to work at it. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. Even if you work at it and read all the books and do all the things, it will still affect you, and it will still take time. You know, I'm coming up to 11 months. I wish I could just wave a magic wand and go, just take the negative parts out and just go and just have the fond memories, and I'm waiting for that point that I've been told that you think about the good and the fond memories, and I'm still at the avoiding places stage where I avoid certain restaurants and takeaways and certain places because I can't face them. Some people think that you should get over it in 6 months, 3 months, 9 months. Those people are stupid. There was something I heard quite a lot, which was giving yourself time to grieve and space to grieve. Again, a bit like grief work, I have a bit of a problem with these phrases because it sounds like it's some kind of abstract that you can be on your chaise longue and lie there on your chaise longue and just grieve and think about it, and nothing else needs to be done. There's a certain privilege in that. There is things, as I said earlier, what need to be done. You have to try and get through them. It's a bit glib to be told, oh, you need to have space and time to grieve and give grace to yourself and that sort of stuff. And it's not necessarily wrong, kind of well-meaning, but it kind of falls a bit flat because you're like, oh, I've got to phone the electricity people, I've got to phone the pensions people, I've got to this, I've got to sort out a funeral, I've got to talk with the coroner, I've got to this. It's nice to say, give yourself space to grieve. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. Oh, well, I'll grieve on Saturdays. That's not how it works. It hits you when you don't want to. I remember one point I was having a meal, I was trying to eat and I was just crying, having the full on ugly cry, sort of massive, cannot stop crying. And I'm like, seriously, can I just stop crying so I can eat? And that's exactly the kind of thing of it's like, oh, you want to live space and, you know, time to grieve. Yeah, in a way it kind of happens to you, and it's not like something you can, as I say, do on your holidays. I see it a little bit like a tango or a dance. Sometimes you have to go backwards several steps before you can go forwards. There have been times where I have gone, you know, been like going really well and then I've gone straight back. It takes time, and how much time depends on every person, and it might sound in a way like a bit like saying everyone is different at the start, like, yes, Tim, so what? I was surprised at how much I was thinking it would be a slow, you know, curve, and now it's just all over the place. It is close to waves. Important dates will be a minefield. Every first birthday, first Christmas, first Easter, first whatever, every anniversary, you know, the first week, the first month, the first year, the first six months mark, you know, it will be difficult at those times. You will feel away. You feel some kind of way at those points. That's when I think you probably do need to give yourself grace in this process all the way through, but specifically those times, kind of almost like schedule that, okay, that's so-and-so's birthday, I need to be aware that that's our anniversary date. You might want to spend some time alone at those times. You might want to be with people. That might change, you know, hourly, by the minute. It might be mood thing. Anybody who is part of your life should give you a lot of grace and space to be like that. I don't want to say permission to be flaky, but at times like this, yeah, you do have some permission to be flaky about things, because you just literally don't know. So you might be entering into a place and then be like, no, can't do this. That's fine. I think it's probably worse to actually force yourself through these things prematurely. Better to do it when you are ready. And that leads on to the next point, is you will find different ways to honour that person. You will develop your own rituals. In my case, on Saturdays at 6 p.m, I always have opera playing. He always listened to opera on Saturdays. I'm not a big fan of opera. I've had to sit through a Wagner opera. Yeah, that was like, yes, John, putting me through this. I light a candle on the Friday, because Friday nights was always our date night. It's things like that which will develop over time, which are unique to you and that person. And yes, I still talk to John. If anyone says that's somehow wrong or weird or whatever, they can get in the sea. I don't care. Really, what makes you feel you are honouring that person, celebrating their life, and they're still part of your life. Whatever feels right for you. And the last one, I mentioned about what the friends that haven't been through this can do, is try and get some form of normalcy. It can be really easy to get into this grief world and just be so focused on what's happened. And it is good to actually just get away from that. You know, if you can, holiday, go and visit friends, go and be with children. Being with my godson and his little brother really helped, actually. In their world, life goes on. It's nice to be reminded of that. Things do go on. And some people think that somehow, you should feel shame for having a good time because they're not here to experience it. And that's a genuine feeling. But I would say, try not to feel shame for those things. And also other people around you might feel like, we can't do this, because it makes a mockery of what you're going through. But no, it doesn't, because you know that life goes on. As I sat in that garden on that day, there's a farmer's market where I live, and you could hear the people, the music there, and it was a weird juxtaposition, but it was oddly comforting, because it was like, well, for other people, life goes on. I think people are kind of worried about those life things around those who are grieving. They haven't died. They're still living. And so it's all right to live for a while. It's all right to get out of that situation. It's all right to get out of the grief. It's all right to get out of the dark doom and just be. And just be yourself. And just live. The friends that may not understand what you're going through can just be there to help bring you out of that eternal churn of Sadmin and sorting and all that sort of stuff. I felt that with my videos to Ivanhoe Beacon. A shout out to Molly. I think about 6 weeks after John died, I did the Ivanhoe Beacon trip. So I think it was maybe about 2 months after I did the Shropshire Hills trip, and those really helped. Shout out to Paul and Idiot Outdoors. It was just getting out of here and doing something you would have usually done really does help. Just going and doing, so going for a walk, going for a hike, going for a wild camping trip, just getting out of that rut. It really does help. So I hope you didn't enjoy that. Yeah, I usually say, I hope you enjoyed that. It's not really a video you enjoy, is it? And I hope somebody, finds it useful in the darkest time, because I remember feeling so alone. I still do, to some extent, at night, late at night, those 3, 4 a.m. moments. It still is, no one really can help you out of those. I hope for somebody this video is a tiny, tiny torchlight in a very dark time. This video, as with all of them, is dedicated to John and the memory of him. We'll see on every video, or nearly every video. I think I missed one recently. There is a dedication at the start or the end. I don't want to go, it gets better, because, as I say, it's different for everyone. It changes. It changes after time. And it gets lesser and changes over time. On screen now, I think I probably put the video I did about John. I will speak to you soon. Something more around hiking, I think.